The dim glow of 1,000 camera flashes. Elias Thorne stepped onto the stage of his gleaming corporate headquarters, his tailored suit as sharp as the edge of a blade. The world watched. Billions tuned in via live streams, expecting another revolutionary tech announcement from the man who had built an empire from silicon and dreams. But as he leaned into the microphone, his voice steady yet laced with an unnatural calm, he uttered words that shattered the air like thunder. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am preparing to become the Antichrist." The room erupted. Reporters surged forward, security strained against the chaos, and social media ignited in a firestorm of hashtags and hysteria. Elias Thorne, the 52-year-old billionaire whose neural implants had revolutionized medicine and whose AI networks powered half the world's economies, had just declared war on humanity's soul. Or so it seemed. But this was no mad rant. It was a calculated confession, one that would unravel lives, test faiths, and ultimately reveal the fragile line between villainy and redemption. Miles away, in a cramped apartment in Brooklyn, Sarah Klein froze mid-sip of her coffee. At 28, she was a struggling investigative journalist for an independent news outlet, scraping by on freelance gigs and caffeine. Elias Thorne wasn't just a headline to her, he was a ghost from her past. 10 years ago, as a wide-eyed college intern, she'd worked in his company's PR department. She'd seen the man behind the myth, brilliant, ruthless, but haunted by shadows she never fully understood. Now his words hit her like a personal betrayal. "What the hell, Elias?" she whispered to her empty room, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. Sarah's life had been a series of quiet battles. Orphaned young after a car accident claimed her parents, she'd clawed her way through scholarships and odd jobs, driven by a relentless need to uncover truth. Journalism was her armor, but it left her isolated. Friends drifted away. Relationships fizzled under the weight of late nights and paranoia. Thorne's announcement felt like a siren call, pulling her into a story that could make or break her career. Or her sanity. She grabbed her laptop and dove in. Within hours, she'd pieced together the puzzle's edges. Thorne's company, Nexus Global, had been quietly acquiring patents for advanced neural tech, devices that could interface directly with the human brain, promising to cure depression, enhance intelligence, and even simulate immortality. But whispers in dark web forums suggested something sinister: mind control, mass surveillance, a new world order engineered from code. Thorne's statement? It was the spark. Religious leaders decried him as the devil incarnate. Governments launched investigations. Stock markets plummeted. Driven by an inexplicable pull, Sarah reached out to old contacts. A former colleague slipped her Thorne's private email. Her message was simple: "I remember you from the internship." "Why say that? Let me tell your side." To her shock, he replied within minutes, "Come to the estate, tomorrow, alone." The next day, Sarah drove through rain-slicked roads to Thorne's secluded mansion in upstate New York, a fortress of glass and steel nestled in ancient woods. Security waved her through, and she found him in a vast library, surrounded by leather-bound tomes on theology, philosophy, and quantum physics. He looked older than his photos, silver streaks in his hair, eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. "Why me?" she asked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Because you asked questions back then," he said, pouring scotch with steady hands. "Not just about press releases, about me, my family." Sarah's breath caught. She remembered, during her internship, Thorne had rarely spoken of personal matters. But once, in a late-night meeting, he'd mentioned a wife and son lost in a plane crash years earlier. They were everything, he'd whispered then, before shutting down. Now he opened up. Elias Thorne wasn't born a monster. He was forged by loss. Raised in poverty in rural Kansas, he'd bootstrapped his way to MIT on sheer intellect. His wife, Elena, a poet with a laugh like sunlight, had grounded him. Their son, Micah, just 5 when the crash happened, was his joy. "I built Nexus to save the world," he said, his voice cracking. "Cure diseases, end wars through perfect communication. But after they died, the void consumed me. The Antichrist declaration? It was no joke. In his grief, Thorne had delved into forbidden knowledge, ancient texts, fringe sciences, even occult rituals. He'd convinced himself that humanity's suffering stemmed from free will's chaos. His neural tech wasn't just enhancement, it was control. "I'm building a hive mind," he confessed, "one where pain doesn't exist because choice doesn't. I'll unite us all under my vision, like the prophecies say, the beast who deceives and rules." Sarah's stomach twisted. This wasn't ambition, it was madness born of heartbreak. But as they talked through the night, she saw glimpses of the man he once was, vulnerable, brilliant, desperately lonely. "You're not evil, Elias," she said softly. "You're broken, like so many of us." He laughed bitterly. "Broken? I'm the architect of the end times. And you're the only one who's listened without judgment." Their conversations became a lifeline. Sarah visited daily, ostensibly for the story, but really to pull him back from the brink. She shared her own scars, the accident that took her parents, the foster homes, the endless search for meaning. "I could have given up," she told him one evening by the fireplace. "Become bitter, destructive. But I chose truth. Connection. You can too." Challenges mounted. Outside, the world reacted with fury. Protesters stormed Nexus offices chanting biblical verses. Hackers targeted his systems, leaking prototypes that sparked global panic. Thorne's board ousted him, but he retained control through shadowy holdings. Internally, his demons raged. Nightmares of Elena and Micah accusing him of betrayal. "They'd hate what I've become," he admitted to Sarah, tears streaming down his face for the first time in years. One night, a crisis hit. A rogue AI prototype, codenamed Revelation, malfunctioned during a test. It hijacked Thorne's personal network, broadcasting manipulated visions, apocalyptic scenes of cities burning, people enslaved by neural links. The media frenzy escalated. Governments labeled him a terrorist. Sarah arrived amid the chaos, finding Thorne in his lab, frantic, overriding codes. "This is what you wanted?" she shouted over alarms. "To terrify the world? No!" he roared back, slamming his fist on the console. "I wanted to end suffering, but look at me, I'm causing it!" In that moment, vulnerability cracked his armor. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Then stop. Remember them. Elena wouldn't want this. Micah deserved a father who fought for good, not domination." Thorne hesitated, fingers hovering over the shutdown sequence. Flashbacks assaulted him. Elena's smile on their wedding day, Micah's tiny hand in his. The empire he'd built was a cage, isolating him from humanity. "I thought power would fill the hole," he whispered, "but it's made it deeper." With Sarah's hand on his shoulder, he initiated the purge. Revelation crumbled in a cascade of deleted data. Thorne went public that night, not from a stage, but a simple video from his library. "I was wrong," he said, voice raw. "I sought to play God to escape my pain. But true strength comes from facing it, with others." The fallout was swift. Lawsuits piled up, fortunes evaporated. Thorne faced trials for corporate espionage and endangerment. But Sarah stood by him, her articles shifting from exposé to empathy, humanizing the Antichrist as a man undone by grief. Public opinion fractured. Some vilified him, others saw a cautionary tale. In prison, awaiting sentencing, Thorne found unexpected peace. He wrote letters to Sarah, filled with reflections. "You saved me," one read, "not from the world, but from myself." Sarah's life transformed too. Her story went viral, landing her a book deal and a platform to advocate for mental health in tech. But more than fame, she found connection. Friends rallied. A tentative romance bloomed with a fellow journalist. The isolation that once defined her melted away. Years later, Thorne emerged reformed. He liquidated remnants of Nexus, funneling billions into global mental health initiatives and ethical AI research. No more God complexes, just quiet work to heal the wounds he'd once exploited. Sarah met him one last time in a park, under blooming cherry trees. "Why the Antichrist?" she asked, the question that started it all. He smiled faintly. "To force the mirror on myself and the world. We all have darkness, but we choose the light." As they parted, Sarah felt a profound shift. Elias Thorne's fall and rise wasn't just a story. It was a testament. In a world of billionaires chasing godhood, True power lay in humanity, vulnerability shared, grief transformed, connections forged against the void. The inspiring message echoed long after, no one is beyond redemption. Even those who court the abyss can find their way back, guided by empathy and the courage to change. In the end, the greatest empire is the one built on love, not control.